So, Todd, it's no secret that conservatives and Christians have for a long time now been skeptical of big tech, worried that big tech is restricting their content. And you've got a really interesting solution to search engines. It's called FreeSpoke. It's a really innovative new search engine that really could take on Google as a competitor. So, tell us a little bit about FreeSpoke. What is it and what inspired you to launch it?
Well, I'll tell you, like, I'll just kind of start with our little origin story is that for years, I felt like the results I was getting from Google and other search engines were coming with a little bit of a bias, like a left-leaning bias, and I wasn't getting results that I expected. And I said to myself, like, someone, whether it's, the young kids that work at Google or the executives, they're guiding this information that's being shared and kind of like suppressing information that's right-leaning. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to go out and just build a search engine that doesn't try to hide anything, that you kind of have this platform that is about free speech. Because our country was built on free speech. That's the whole idea is that, this idea, I don't have to agree with what you say, but I'll die defending your right to say it. Well, big tech has decided you don't have a right to say that anymore.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, and this is what the danger of that is, if any one ideology comes in and says the other isn't allowed to be there, you have sort of this weird ideological vacuum. And there are a lot of people today, and we'll go through some of the examples of this, who will say, oh, people on the right or, Christian groups, because both of those groups tend to be the ones that have similar, complaints about this. They're overstating these facts. These things aren't happening. Big tech isn't really doing this. What would you say to those critics who would say, oh, this is all being conjured up or made up?
I would just respond like they don't hide it. Google openly comes out and says, we suppress information that goes against the consensus on climate science. And I got to say, like, I'm not a climate denier, but that's not science. Science is about the free flow of ideas. And if someone questions your idea, you should chase it down and try to figure out who's right and who's wrong. I mean, this is basically like saying, Galileo, when he was put in a prison for saying the world is round, we can't have that sort of suppression of ideas. And I think there's lots of examples, even if you go during the COVID, doctors who questioned like our COVID protocols that had their videos taken off of YouTube, and just anybody who questions like the status quo gets canceled. And that's not what America's about. We're about free speech.
Well, and it's interesting too, looking at the abortion issue right now, because obviously that's what everybody's talking about in the country. You've got a number of organizations, both on social media and then when it comes to search, who have complained about their treatment. One such group is Life Issues Institute. It's a pro-life educational group. They claim they had a campaign going to try to reach people who might have been on the cusp of being pro-life but weren't quite there. They were getting 10,000 video views a day, and then suddenly, when the Dobbs draft, of the Supreme Court, the abortion ruling, when that leaked before the official ruling, they suddenly saw their numbers going down to 2,500 views a day. And so they've accused Google of restricting them. But beyond that, you also had a really interesting example that I'm sure you're aware of some pro-choice politicians writing letters to Google, actually asking Google not to allow pro-life pregnancy centers and other groups to show up when people are searching for abortion, right? I don't know if you want to react to that at all, but I thought it was interesting to actually see politicians almost lobbying for Google to do some of these things.
Well, it's a little as scary as what it is, and it's dangerous when you get into a situation where an administration and Democrat politicians, along with the media and along with big tech, are trying to suppress the free flow of ideas. Like that's not the United States of America. That looks something that's more akin to like what you would expect in Russia or China, but not the U.S. The U.S. is really the idea is like let's debate the ideas and let's like have our factual evidence. Let's articulate our points of view and come to those conclusions. And so, even if you disagree with someone, you shouldn't be wanting to suppress their ideas because if you're willing to suppress someone else's ideas, I can guarantee you that someday someone's going to want to suppress yours, right?
Yeah, no, and that is kind of where we are right now. And I think a lot of people, it creates a fear. People think twice about saying what they believe, saying what they think. And for obvious reasons, that's a very dangerous thing. And so obviously we've painted some of these issues with Google that exist right now. I want to get back to FreeSpoke because we know what the problem is FreeSpoke seems to be a solution to this. Talk a little bit about what people experience using FreeSpoke and how it differs maybe from the ways in which Google presents information to us.
Well, so what we've done is we've created an entirely new search engine. And when you say that, that's from the technology side. What you have to do is you have to create this crawler that goes out and looks at all these web pages, and then tags them. And so you can create this catalog of information that you know is out there. So when people search, you can find it again quickly. So what we've done is we've created a search engine that is constantly searching for new sources of content and trying to get all sides of every issue and every topic. So we've kind of focused on news and current events, and when you go there, we label news content as either left, right, or middle, and we do that based on a few outside sources that do that on their own, and then some of our own analysis in house. And so what we're really trying to do is just give people the context to make up their own mind. And I'm not trying to lead anybody down one particular path or another. I just want to put the information out there as clear as possible and let people come to their own conclusions.
Well, that seems to be the way that it should be done, right? Here's all the information. You believe what you want to believe. Once you've seen it all, you make your determination. One of the things that is interesting, about the way that Google handles information, they obviously have a new policy on abortion of how they're going to allow abortion-related content to be processed. And some people on the pro-life side are very concerned about how that is going to play out. It really is interesting to look at these examples because whether or not people think these things are overstated, I agree with you. I think we see that they openly talk about it. But when you look at every example we have, they all seem to be examples of people on the right or of Christian groups who are saying things that people on the left don't like. I don't often see, and I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm sure there have been examples of people on the left who are being restricted in this way. When we talk about social media, what has been the most disturbing thing to you to see when it comes to people who are banned versus people who are allowed to stay on social media, for instance?
Well, this isn't Google specific. It's all these platforms are sort of left leaning into the current narrative. The most astounding one to me is that President Trump is not allowed to be on Twitter, but all of the mullahs in Iran are. Right. And so if you have a standard where you're going to take people off for inflammatory language, fine, that's fine. But it has to be doled out in a way that like looks at all this inflammatory language in the same way. And so when you're taking someone who is in the West saying something that people don't like and comparing it to what people in other countries are saying when they're actually killing and like imprisoning and oppressing people, and they're allowed to have their free speech. That it's just amazing to me. And another example is a little bit more political. I was the finance chairman at the RNC for a couple of years, and one of the things we ran into in 2020 is all of our emails that we sent out to Gmail accounts, 80% of them got put into spam. And it was discovered is that only 10% of Democrat emails got put into spam on Gmail accounts. And so now we're trying to say like, okay, well, why is a Republican email a scam, uh, put into their spam, and why is a Democrat email not? And so again, you go back to like, where are the examples of people on the left getting canceled? Where are like the pro-choice people, or like anybody that's like on the side of COVID that says that we should absolutely force everyone to get the vaccine and hold them down until they get it. Why are their not canceled? And oftentimes the crazy part is that people are getting canceled for just wanting to have honest conversations, right?
Yeah.
Like even now, it's not even about an honest conversation. It's not even about presenting an idea. It's this idea of wanting to question the common narrative.
Yeah, I mean, we see that with the gender debate. We see that with abortion. We see that with a lot of these issues. It doesn't matter whether people agree or disagree with people on the right or Christians about those issues. What matters is that in a free society, you have a free flow of information, as you were saying, and you have a discussion about it. And the person who wins is the person whose argument makes the most sense. What is troubling about all of this is you know this because you've been in Republican politics and you've heard these arguments. And I've researched this extensively as a journalist. When you look at media, when you look at Hollywood, when you look at universities and education more generally, the bias toward the left that is often claimed to be there, you now mix in big tech, and it's really fascinating to see that almost every facet of society where information is spread has this sort of bias to it. And so the conversation almost from the start is restricted in every one of these arenas. The one place you could go, social, right, or search to get information, is now having those same barometers there. So, it's interesting too, because I've heard you talk about regulation. A lot of people have called, including people on the right, for regulation of these companies, of these big tech companies. But in light of what you just said, what would you respond to them when they advocate for that sort of thing?
Well, actually, I saw that Senator Mike Lee from Utah was proposing some sort of restrictions on Google, like, companies that serve ads that generate so much money. And so I reached out to him and I said, Senator, I appreciate where you're coming from on this, but that's not the answer. The answer isn't to regulate Google into some sort of trap or in sort of like confined area. But the idea is what we need is more competition. That's the American way. The idea that, like, there's only McDonald's. No, there's not only McDonald's. There's lots of restaurants where you can get a hamburger, and there should be lots of options when you go searching for news and information. And Google can be one of those. But I think that having many options and competition is the way. And I think, like, I'm kind of putting my money where my mouth is and building a search engine and saying, I think that there's demand for this out there. And if people will go along with me and use FreeSpoke or go down and download the app and use that as their search engine, we'll show Google that they don't have the monopoly that they think they have.
Yeah, I have to tell you, it is really interesting in light of what you said about the right, left, center, being able to sort of label the news and understand what it is you're looking at. That is something that has really been missing, right? Because you go and you search for something and you look and you have no idea, for many people, what perspective it's coming from. It's great to actually enter in and know that once you see the article. For me, that actually builds more trust in what I'm reading. I can read something from the left and understand this is from this perspective. What is damaging, I think, and troubling is to not know the perspective it's from and to always assume that it's just the truth, right? That there's no lens through which it's being seen. Why did you guys choose, just to kind of dig in on that a little bit more, because I think that's so unique and important to do that with the news presentation?
Well, really, what our thinking is that people are busy and they're pressed for time. And so when people come and they're looking for information, it's not meant to be like this panacea which solves all your problems, but it's meant to help you give you just a little bit of context when you're searching for information, to know where the person that you're reading, who wrote that, where they're coming from, and their point of view and what they might have written before. And so it's just try to help people sort through all the information that's out there. And again, it's all about coming to your own conclusions, finding the information, educating yourself. I just have a lot of faith and optimism in the American people. And I think, when the information is put in front of them squarely and clearly, they make good decisions. And so
Well,
we're just
yeah.
trying to help people make good decisions.
Well, and I think we're watching actually what happens right now when people don't know what's going on and a light is shined on it. You have parents showing up to school board meetings. You have people react when they start to find that information out. It's almost better to put it all out there, let people see it all, and have those discussions and debates. So, final question for you: flash forward 5 years from now, where do you want to see FreeSpoke?
Well, I would like to see ourselves up there in, listed as one of the search engines that everybody has on their iPhone, whether it be like DuckDuckGo or Google or Bing. But I think there's a lot of options out there, and people should be thoughtful about what search engine they're using and how they're accessing the information on the internet. So hopefully we'll be in the mix with one of those names, and hopefully we'll have a good chunk of it.
Well, Todd, I so appreciate your time today. Appreciate you coming on and looking forward to speaking again sometime soon.
Yeah, Billy, really, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. Love to catch up more in the future.